So the World Press Photo nominees are out, so I thought I'd give a rundown on the individual photo winners. For those that don't know, the World Press Photo Awards are one of the oldest and most prestigious photo award ceremonies. As the name suggests, they specifically focus on press photos. This year there was several things in common between the nominees. You had half of them from Getty Images. All the photos were taken on Canons. All but one of the photos used a wide-angle lens. I think that this year there wasn't one photo that sort of stuck out, that you saw it and you were like instantly like, this is the photo that's gonna win. Compared with last year, where you had the photo of the Venezuelan man that was on fire, and I think it came out in like February, and everyone was like, well, this is just gonna win everything. Usually, I think with award ceremonies, especially ones that are focusing on photojournalism or documentary photography, the ones that are gonna win are gonna be the ones that have the confluence between being compositionally really good photos, and then on top of that, taking a photo of something that's a major news story and really reflects the news climate. The first nominee is by South African photographer Brent Sturton. The photo features a woman from an all-female anti-poaching team in Zimbabwe. Shutter speed is 1/200th, f/18 f-stop. It's a focal length of 24 millimeters and a 200 ISO. So Brent's long been one of my favorite photographers. If you look on the wall there, actually I have one of his photos up. He focuses a lot on environmental issues and specifically poaching. This photo specifically is very similar to a photo that he did last year, where another anti-poaching team was conducting concealment and stealth training as well. So this photo is all about texture. You have the texture that's from the ghillie suit, the uniform that the woman's wearing, and how it matches the background. And then you have the texture of the woman's face and how it sort of matches the same texture as the gun, the sort of same smoothness. I think in photos, generally what makes a good photo in terms of composition is that something that sort of feeds the OCD in our brain. When you hear a song or you hear a chord and it's working well, it's because the wavelengths are working in harmony with each other. And I think it's a similar thing with photography. From a compositional standpoint, the photos that stick out to us are going to be the ones that sort of simplify things in such a way that it plays well to the OCD in our brain, the desire for order. So in this photo specifically, our brain is able to simplify it down because of the texture between the clothing and the background being similar. And then, like I said, the face and the gun also having a similar texture. That sort of helps to split it up. But also on top of that, the head is silhouetted against the sky. This helps for the brain to pick it out and makes, really sort of highlights the head and draws attention to it. Another really interesting thing that Brent does in his photos is that he uses a flash in the field. I think that he's using one in this one just based upon the shadows, but also from the catch light in the eyes. That's sort of the bright reflection that you see in the eye. This really helps to draw attention because the eyes are drawn specifically towards contrast. So a bright white dot in the eyes is going to bring a lot of attention. Next up is a photo from French and Spanish photographer Catalina Martin-Chico. It features a former FARC guerrilla that's pregnant, sitting in a room with her husband, with a ton of Disney posters and things for children on the walls. This is from a story that's highlighting the sudden baby boom that's happened in the days following the peace accords in Colombia. Because many of the female guerrillas in the FARC weren't able to have babies, mainly because the commanders thought that it wasn't conducive for the guerrilla lifestyle. This led to a lot of the women giving their babies to relatives, or in some cases having what are alleged forced abortions. The FARC heavily denies this, obviously. The photo uses a 1/50th of a second shutter, a 2.8 f-stop, a 24 millimeter focal length, and a 4000 ISO. I think this photo essay is amazing, actually. I think there's actually better photos in it that I like more. But I think that when you look at the major photo awards, they tend to want something that's really indicative of an iconic moment that's from that year. And if you look at previous years, that tends to be what they pick. So although this is a good photo in my opinion, I don't think it will win just because of the fact that the photo needs to be explained. The next photo is by Australian photographer Chris McGrath. It's a photo of the media gathering that's happening outside of the Saudi embassy following the disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi. So Khashoggi was a Saudi Arabian dissident. According to the CIA and Turkish intelligence, he was murdered for his dissident opinions. The Saudi government says that he was accidentally killed and then, I guess, accidentally dismembered and then accidentally made to disappear, which seems unlikely. So from a technical perspective, it's using a 1/160th shutter, an f5 f-stop, a focal length of 158, and an ISO of 2000. This is the only photo that uses a focal length of more than 35 millimeters. And my estimation is that Chris was standing off from where the media circus was taking place and had a 7200 and zoomed in and managed to capture the moment that the employee of the Saudi embassy is trying to hold the press back. So again, I think this is a good news photo. I think that it's got some cool compositional elements. You have a horizon, which is established by the gate, which is sort of cutting the image into 2/3 on the bottom and 1/3 on the top, with most of the photographers on the top 1/3, and then the guy holding back the press on the bottom 2/3. And this is something you'll see that's really common, is really common in landscape photography, but it just sort of plays well in the brain to have that ratio happening. I don't think that this photo will win just because I don't think it's sort of that iconic photo that will stick out. It's a good news photo, but I mean, I don't think it's like the photo of the year. Next up is a photo by American photographer John Moore. It's a photo of a crying girl on the border as her mother's being arrested by immigration services in the US. It's using a 1/100th shutter, a 35 millimeter focal length, a 3.2 f-stop, and a 2500 ISO. I think this is sort of the confluence of a photo that's compositionally really well done, and it's also showing an iconic moment in the last year. There was a lot of controversy surrounding the forced separations of kids from their parents, and immigration in itself has been a major issue in the last year. I think this is a photo that captures that news story, and when you look back, this is sort of the photo that is going to stick out from the year. And I think it's probably the most likely one to win. I think compositionally you have a cool thing going on where you have the older people cropped out of the photo and it's just the girl, and the photo's taken from the eye level of the girl, which helps you relate to her. And then it's taking place at sort of just the exact moment where the mother's getting patted down with the gloves and the girl's crying, and it's just sort of the confluence of all these things that works really well together. And then on top of that, I think you have the scale of things where the girl's so much smaller than the adults, and then you have this giant American truck with its giant wheels, and it dwarfs over the kid. And I think it just adds to all these different elements that sort of help to make this the iconic photo from that story. Next up, you have a photo from Italian photographer Marco Gulezin. I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing that right. The photo features a kid standing in front of a wall with drawings of RPGs on the back. Chad's experienced a lot of problems over the last year with Boko Haram, with a drought that's affected the country massively, and also you have 2.5 million displaced people. Technically, the photo is shot at 1/400th. It's an f/18 f-stop. It uses a 25 millimeter, and it's a 100 ISO. I think from a compositional perspective, this is a really cool image. You have that 2/3, 1/3 thing that I was talking about earlier with the horizon, where you have the boy and the drawings taking up 2/3 of the bottom of the image, and then you have 1/3 at the top, which is basically empty and just showing the texture. The color elements, where you have just sort of two tones. You have the shade of the boy's skin, and then you have the shade of the wall behind it. And it's just sort of, it's just these two tones that are helping to simplify the image for the brain. The last photo is by a Syrian photographer, Mohammed Badra. It shows victims of an alleged gas attack in Syria receiving treatment. It was shot at 1/40th, f2.8. It's a 24 millimeter and a 1000 ISO. I think compositionally this is a really cool photo. You have sort of a division of the photo into 4 parts, with the 2 people looking at the camera and then the 2 people that are not looking at the camera. You also have this alternating effects between the guy on the right, the guy in the middle, and then the 2 people receiving treatment that aren't looking at the camera. I think this is just a really powerful photo. I think there's a chance it could win because the Syrian story has been huge this year, and I think that just compositionally it's a really nice photo. So I definitely think it's between this photo and the one from the girl on the border. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you go and take a look at the rest of the photos. Last year's photos definitely is another thing I look at just because there's some really high quality images. I think that any of the photos from last year that were nominated could have won this year. I'll be doing more videos in the field as well as some more videos going into the things surrounding photojournalism like award ceremonies. Thanks for watching.